I'm Becca, and this is my BookTube. Hi friends, welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you were watching this video after watching a previous video. Welcome if you are new here. Today I'm just going to be recapping the books that I read in March and April. I had a couple DNFs, but I had a couple really amazing reads that I absolutely loved. So let's jump in. Okay, so to start, I think I'm just gonna list off the DNFs. Last time I did my recap, I think I listed off like a bunch of books somewhat in order, and then I like relisted them as I was talking, and I also hadn't really kept track of them very clearly this time because I hadn't been planning on making a BookTube at the time. This time, since I already knew I was going to be making a video, I planned ahead and I was like, okay, we're going to keep track of the books. So this time I took notes. I noted books that I DNF'd, and I noted like what days I was reading books and stuff. So organization. Let's get to it. So books that I DNF'd in March and April, I had Discovery of Witches. I tried to read that at the beginning of March and ended up DNFing it, I think around the 50% area. I had a physical copy. I actually took it and put it in a little free library last weekend when I was in Saratoga Springs. I really wanted to enjoy it, but I just couldn't get into it. It just wasn't really clicking with me. It wasn't really seeming all that interesting. And I'm the person that's like, if we're at a certain point in the book and I'm still not that interested, it's too much. I need to be able to be engaged with the story very early on. And there were elements to it in the first couple chapters that I did really enjoy. And then the longer I read it, the more disinterested I became. And I was just kind of very weirded out by the characters. I also tried to watch the show on Netflix, because I thought maybe watching the show would help me get into the book a little bit better. I watched the first couple episodes, and the changes that they made, I don't feel like improved anything. If anything, it made the characters seem weirder than they already seemed to be in the book. So unfortunately I lost interest in that and moved on. And then towards the end of March, I tried reading Daughter of No Worlds because I had read the other two Crowns of Nyaxia books. So my thought was that because I had enjoyed Carissa Broadbent's other books, that I would enjoy a Daughter of No Worlds. Everyone that has posted about that book has said that it was amazing and how much they loved it. And again, it was another book that I had gotten like really far into it and felt like I had gotten nowhere. Also, it played on the trope of like the student-teacher thing, or the like mentor-mentee thing, and like that's just not something I enjoy. There's a Rebecca Ross book that I read that also had that, and I love Rebecca Ross. I think she's amazing and talented. I actually thought that book was okay, and if it had not been for the fact that there was like a mentor-mentee thing happening in the book, I probably would have really loved it. I mean, it's not as bad when they're like essentially the same age, and it's kind of just like that person's a year ahead of the other person, and so it's like, hey, you've already had your year here, you know, you have a fresh memory of being the new person, why don't you show them the ropes and get them settled? Like, that's not that weird to me. But when it's a legit, like a much older person, it would seem, or like a much more seasoned person, and it's a like teacher-student scenario, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. So I didn't enjoy that. There were other elements to the book that I really didn't enjoy. So I just didn't feel any interest or inclination towards it. So I ended up DNFing that as well, unfortunately. And then the other book that I read pretty far into and then ended up DNFing was Blade of Secrets, which is very sad to me. It's a Tricia Levenseller book. And I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. I actually talked about it in my autism video, my autism representation video. I think the main character had a really great autism representation, especially from the female perspective. I, again, just wasn't feeling that committed or interested, and I talked about this in the autism representation video. It's one of those things where it's like, if the story is a continuous, we're running away or we're running to this town and we're taking this journey, every time we stop something crazy happens, like, I get tired. I get so tired, and I just don't have the mental emotional stamina to read a story like that. And so honestly, before I chose to DNF it, what I did was I went on Kindle Unlimited because that was where I was reading it. The second book was also available on Kindle Unlimited. Read the description, and usually if it's a sequel to a book, the beginning of the description will kind of catch you up and be like, because of the events of the previous book where X, Y, and Z happened, this is now what the characters are responding to and doing with their time. And when I read where the other book ended and what the characters were purposing to do in the second book, I was like, no, I'm just not that interested. So I DNF'd it, but I don't think it was bad. There was a lot of really good stuff in it. It was very fun to read. A lot of the character interactions and the magic were amazing. It just wasn't something I was interested in spending my time on anymore, unfortunately. I think I made it to like the 71% mark. But yeah, so those were the DNFs that I had in March and April. Let's move on to the books that I actually read and thoroughly enjoyed. So the first book I read to completion just in the month of March, I somewhat counted The Songbird and the Heart of Stone because I started it in February and then finished it in March, but really most of the reading I think happened in February. It really would count more as like a February book. But I read Oathbound by Tracy Deonn, and I loved it. I read it very, very quickly, but not because I was rushing through it. I read it quickly because it was really good. I will personally say I don't like where the story is going because of the ship I like. My ship is sinking, and it makes me very sad. But Tracy Deonn writes the most. One, she makes fantastic representation in her stories for a lot of different things. One of the things I love telling people about Legendborn, the first one, is that if you read it, there's representation for a lot of different characters that are considered minorities, and they're not cliche, they're not caricatures of that representation. I really loved being able to read Legendborn the first time I read it and have kind of an eye-opening experience of things that I should be aware of that I can't know from my own personal experience, that I have to learn and glean from someone else's experience. And Oathbound, very similar. I loved what Bree was challenged to do. I loved getting to know certain characters that have been only spoken of prior to this that we then got to meet. I loved getting to see some of the older characters. There was this is a bit of a spoiler, but there's like an amnesia trope that goes on. So there's scenarios where a character is interacting with people that she knows and doesn't realize that she knows them. And so, yeah, it just like hoping and waiting for things to... She's aware that she has amnesia. She knows that she has gaps in her memory and that there's people... She is fully aware that she could interact with someone that she knows and not know that she knows them. Like, she's fully aware, because it's a magic amnesia that she kind of chose. It's not a hit your head and woke up and don't know where you are type thing. So yeah, there was new trials that happened in it. It wasn't a copy and paste of any of the other two previous books, which is something I always watch out for when I'm reading series, is like if we're just regurgitating the same plot from the first or second book, then the author isn't really challenging themselves to create a new story with the next chapter. And Oathbound, this honkin' thing, really did amazing. telling a new story, introducing some different characters, and playing around with the magic concepts that have existed in the previous 2 books. I will say that I should have read Bloodmarked again before reading Oathbound, because there was a lot of gaps in my memory as far as what happened in the previous book. And there were things being mentioned that I was like, that happened? Because I have no memory of it. So I am now with everybody else who's waiting until who knows when for the 4th installment, and hopefully final installment, so we can get some closure on these characters. The ending, oh my gosh. I was floored by the ending, to the extent that I was like sitting in my living room staring at the wall, just like unsure of what I was supposed to do next, because all I knew how to do was sit there. And then my husband came upstairs and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, how do I explain what just happened? And also the next morning I woke up, because I finished reading it at like 10 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night. And the next morning I woke up, and the first thing I did was reread the ending, because I was not sure that I had actually read what I read, and I needed to make sure I hadn't dreamed it. Part of me hoped I had dreamed it so that I could find out I was wrong, but good Lord, what an ending. If you've read Oathbound, you know what I'm talking about, and I don't know where we go from here. I just hope Tracy continues doing the amazing work that she is doing when it comes to the storytelling, because I want to read the final book and feel good, which I probably won't, considering how her stories have gone, but we shall see. Oh, okay, that's why that looks like that. So I have books listed here. I realized I was writing them down in order that I finished reading them. So I started, after I read Oathbound, oh, you can't see it on the shelf because it's up there. Okay, so after Oathbound, I read Heartless by Marissa Meyer. My friend bought it for me last year because I had read her, what is it called? The Lunar Chronicles. I had read the Lunar Chronicles and I really enjoyed them, and I told her to keep an eye out for them. And she didn't find those, but she found Heartless, and she's like, "Hey, you might enjoy this. I know you also like Alice in Wonderland." So it was sitting on my shelf for the longest time, and then I finally was like, all right, let's give it a shot and see what happens. I loved it. Oh my goodness. The amount of things that I loved in this book. I have a whole page and a half of notes of like things that I stopped to talk about. Let me just give you some of my thoughts. It said, chapters 1 and 2 have excellent momentum, strong start. Chapters 3 and 4, there's a black and white ball, and her, the main character in Heartless is the Queen of Hearts, but it's before she's the Queen of Hearts. Did I write who she goes by? Kath. Her name's Catherine. She goes by Kath. Kath wears a red dress to the black and white ball, so then everyone's eyes are drawn to her. She's a distraction. She's not following the rules, the drama, the emotion. And then, it's Wonderland. It's crazy. Some things don't make sense. We get a bunch of cute scenes with the Cheshire Cat and stuff. And then the Joker arrives, and he, oh my gosh, he starts trouble, and he is so much fun. And him and Kath start this very cute, flirtatious thing. Oh, it was so good. Oh my goodness. Cheshire is really funny. We have a Raven character who's just a non-stop nod to Edgar Allan Poe. Most of the things he says are either direct quotes from Edgar Allan Poe things or are said in a way that makes them sound like they're drawn from an Edgar Allan Poe poem or story. We also play off of a, like, the tarts story for the Queen of Hearts. And so Kath loves to bake. She has this dream of owning her own bakery and selling sweets instead of becoming royalty. Her parents want her to marry the king, and she's not that interested, but she's having to kind of go along and do her daughterly duty. There's a whole section that gives like total Moulin Rouge vibes, and what I'm talking about is in Moulin Rouge when Christian and Satine are like sneaking around behind the Duke's back and are going, oh, we have to work on our play. We have to work together. And, you know, Satine is my muse and I need my muse and she is going to do all these things. And the Duke is like, oh, of course. In order for this to be successful, you must work together. Because the king is trying to marry Kath, and Kath and Joker are in cahoots. Oh, he goes by Jest because he's a jester. And so Jest and Kath carry on this very cute little like Moulin Rouge thing where they're essentially given permission by the king to spend time together and flirt with each other, because Jest is supposed to write a song for Kath and the king or something like that. I don't remember, but it was great. Jest takes Kath to a tea party and it's wonderful. And then there at one point I said, oh no, is this a miscommunication trope? And so I can't remember what happened, but something happened that bothered me because I don't like the miscommunication trope. It stressed me out. I was like, oh man, if this is the miscommunication trope, I'm probably gonna stop reading this book. But I guess it got better because I just moved on. There's a scene where a line is dropped in the story where the title of the book basically gets explained. And what happened was I got towards the end of the book and I stopped reading it to read another book because I didn't want to read the end of the book. I literally wrote, chapter 48 ruined me. I don't want to finish reading this book because I was heartbroken and devastated. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know you're reading the story of the Queen of Hearts, so she has to become the Queen of Hearts, right? Some people, when they do fairy tale reimaginings or retellings, will rewrite the ending. And I was so hoping that was what was going to happen. Somehow something was going to happen and we were just going to get a revision of the end. And I'm going to spoil this for you. She becomes the Queen of Hearts and is harsh. And I was so sad. I was so bummed out. But it was such a magical journey, and Marissa Meyer did an amazing job. And I really, really loved it, but I was so freaking sad that it ended the way that it did. So in saying that, what happened was I got towards the end of that book, and I stopped, and I read A Tempest of Tea. And I did a whole separate video on A Tempest of Tea because of how much I enjoyed reading it, and I literally read it to make a video of it for the week. But if you didn't see that, let me tell you, Tempest of Tea is set in this kind of like Victorian era time period, and it's in this city where there are vampires and humans. Our main character, her name is Arthi. She runs a tea shop by day, and then by night the tea shop converts into like a lounge where the vampires can come and feed. They can either feed off of voluntary human vessels who are willing to allow the vampires to feed legally, or there are also like blood donors, and they can put the blood into a teacup and allow the vampires to drink that way. And it was so fantastic. Had a lot of great reveals. It was very Six of Crows-esque. So if you like the Six of Crows duology, I think you would really enjoy it because it had a lot of fun heist moments to it. The characters were very sweet and very fun. There was betrayal, and there was angst, and there was shocking twists and turns towards the end, and we were left on quite a cliffhanger. I'm very excited for the sequel, which comes out in September. And I think it's supposed to be a duology, so I'm looking forward to reading that because I really, really want to know where things pan out for them. So I read Heartless, paused, read A Tempest of Tea, went back and finished reading Heartless, had my heart shattered into a million pieces. And then, what did I do next? Where did my bookmark go? Oh, I took the bookmark out. Well, that didn't help me. I think I had a little bit of a gap in my reading. But the next book that I read to completion after Heartless was Six Scorched Roses. Six Scorched Roses is a novella in the world of the Crowns of Nyaxia series. It's about two characters that we meet in the second book of the Crowns of Nyaxia series, The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, and it's like their origin story. And originally I wasn't going to read it. A lot of times I don't enjoy novellas, especially when they're like part of a world that I already enjoy. A lot of times they just feel unnecessary to me personally for my enjoyment and understanding of what's going on. But someone I follow on Instagram posted about how much they enjoyed it. I think they read it in like a day or something. And I was like, I can't believe you read that whole thing in a day. Usually I'm the one that reads really fast and people comment on it. And they were like, oh, it was a novella. It was really fast and it was really good. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll check it out. I don't have anything else holding my attention right now. And I'm so glad I did because it was really good. I thought she was also a really great representation of female high-functioning autism. The main character in it, her name is Lilith, and she is very science-brained. She is very logic-brained. I talked about her in my autism representation video, and I talked about her having alexithymia, which is when you are faced with a dangerous situation but don't necessarily respond initially to understanding the fear of the situation. And so she kind of got herself into a couple precarious scenarios. But yeah, that was really, really good. It was a very brief read. It was very sweet, very beautiful, very emotional, and I think gave actually like good, necessary perspective on those two characters that we met and didn't have a full understanding of. Because if you've read The Crowns of Nyaxia, the guy she ends up marrying is a vampire and brings her to the Shadow Court. I can't even remember now, even though it's only been a couple months since I read those books. But he brings her there and everyone assumes, they can tell that she's been turned. Spoiler. But everyone assumes that she was kind of like a kidnapped bride, and there's a language barrier. So everyone thinks that she's been kidnapped and that she's being like held hostage essentially by the guy that she married, and she's telling everybody like, you guys don't understand, like he saved me, like he didn't steal me, he changed my life. And I do remember reading that in The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King and being worried that she was like suffering from Stockholm Syndrome or something, and I was like, was that really what happened, or is she just brainwashed? No, it was real. It's very sweet. It's a very, very beautiful story about both of them changing each other's lives, really, and it is a little bit of kind of like a Beauty and the Beast type thing, because he's held up in his little mansion by himself, wallowing away as this solitary vampire, and she comes in and really changes his perspective on things, and he changes her perspective on things. They really grow as people before they come together and move on and have a beautiful life together. And yeah, I loved it. It was super cute, super wonderful. Did I write any other notes about it? Let me see. I did. I said I think Lilith is meant to be autistic. Good rep so far. And then I said very cute, very sweet. Read it at the end. Oh, that's what happened. I remember. I decided I had a like 2-hour car ride for work, and I knew I wasn't going to be driving, and I decided to take my e-reader with me, and I read it in the car, and I almost cried in front of my coworkers. Oh my gosh. That was like the day I met that person too. It was a new we had a new hire, and then me and another coworker were essentially like training her, and yeah, I decided to read it in the car, and I was sitting there like almost in complete tears rolling down my face in the car, and I had to like stop myself and calm myself down and get myself together so I did not cry in front of my new hire coworker and other coworker. That was like so good, so good. So after reading Six Scorched Roses, I very quickly moved on to reading The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller, and it was okay. It kept my attention. I feel like I read it kind of quickly. And I feel like the character motivations were kind of cool. I feel like a lot of the drama was fun and exciting to read about. It did have more of a setting that I'm not usually interested in, which is very like Bridgerton, Jane Austen, Regency era. That's really not my cup of tea usually. I'm not that interested in ball gowns and courtships and social things like that. There was some very interesting magic in it. There was a reveal at the end that I didn't feel like made very much sense. So, yeah. And there were a lot of things that happened between the female and male main characters that I feel like the author wanted it to evoke a similar emotion and scenario as other books, but it just seemed like a replica. And so I didn't really enjoy it that much because I'm like, that other person kind of did it better. I'm sorry. And I'm just gonna let you know the one note, the singular note that I wrote about this book, and it is my only comment. This is so funny to me. My only comment is the fact that in one scene, I realized that the main character was wearing gloves and licked frosting off of the fingertips. No thank you. I mean, it's Regency era, so people would wear gloves anyways as part of their like outfits, especially like in royal court, like nice scenarios. The other part is that the male main character, he wears gloves because he can't have physical contact with people. It affects his magic. And so the female main character also wears gloves as a way to kind of help, like keep them from touching each other. So they're having dinner, and then it was talking about her like taking an eclair, and she like swiped frosting off of an eclair and was licking it. And then a couple lines later, the author mentioned that she had her gloves on, and I was like, no. I don't know why, but that just gave me a massive ick. I just was so grossed out at the idea of this character licking essentially frosting or icing or like eclair cream off of a glove. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. If it makes sense to you, that's cool, but it didn't make any sense to me. So I was like, no, thank you. No, I don't like it. I also felt like a lot of characters in that were very dumb. And I always feel kind of bummed out when multiple characters are unintelligent. Because I feel like it really does a disservice to the storytelling. I mean, I said I was going to do this, but technically The Shadows Between Us is the last book I read in April. I read that like mid-April, and so I still had a little bit of time at the end of April to read, but Blade of Secrets I didn't finish. I DNF'd. And then the last week of April, I didn't have a ton of time to read because I was really busy working and getting ready to go on my trip to Saratoga Springs. And then after getting back from Saratoga Springs, I just read this, but I can't talk about it yet because this is my first May read, and we're talking about March and April. I can't wait to talk about this book though. And the sequel comes out on Tuesday. Can't wait. So, that's that. Alright guys, well thank you for listening to me talk about my March and April reads. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of those books, any of the ones that I read to completion, or any of the ones that I DNF'd. Let me know what your thoughts were, whether or not you liked them, whether or not you haven't, if you haven't read them yet and you're trying to figure out if you should, let me convince you. Please let me convince you to read these books. Or if it's one of the ones I DNF'd, I'll just convince you to not read it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But thanks. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys supporting me on this YouTube journey that I've started and am enjoying. I'm loving this a lot. A lot more than I thought I would. I thought I was going to dread it. And I thought I was going to give it up pretty quickly. But sticking to it. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Much better. Hi friends, welcome back. Welcome. Oh. Got it. Okay. Try again. Who said that? I quoted something and I can't remember. I don't know who said it. Oh, excuse me. Which is also technically part of the Crowns of Nyaxia series by, wow, her name just left my brain. Carissa Broadbent. Alright. Okay, so giving time context. Wow, where am I even going with these sentences? What am I doing? Yeah, that's,